Hello, hello. See, we got one person in here. Can you hear me? I can't see who's in. It hasn't popped up on my end yet. I just see one person. So if you can hear me, if you would just come in a thumbs up, let me know that you can hear me. Oh, see. I don't know if y'all can hear me. If you can, let me know. Let me pull up something right quick. I'm gonna give people a few minutes to get in. I know a couple people said they was gonna pop in a little late. That's fine. So I'm gonna give everybody just a chance to kind of get in here before I get started. While I'm doing that, I'm gonna mute myself here so I don't. I'm gonna give everybody about 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna get started. Jump in. One, because I don't want to be on here too long, but I want to welcome y'all that's in here already. Welcome to the Static. It's a podcast for Black men, for people of color. We're just gonna talk about some mental health concerns that I see most of all in the office, and how these impact families, relationships, and social interactions. So, if this is your first time, welcome. This is not a private session. This is not a therapy session. So I do want to encourage you to participate, reach out, share your comments, but do understand that it's not a confidential space. So nobody in here is bound to confidentiality. So if you share something that you just don't think you want to share, or you're not comfortable with sharing, please don't, because I can't guarantee that that information will stay here. Um, but yeah, like I said, welcome to the Static. My name is Kowalski. I'm a mental health therapist here in Mississippi. Hopefully opening up my own private practice. But today we're going to be talking about more than him, more than happy, indifferent, and mad, and how men, especially men of color, express emotion and then repress emotions, and how that impacts mental health. So I gave everybody that spiel that's in here already, and then hopefully once the ball gets rolling, more people pop in, we can have a good dialogue about how this stuff shows up, man, in our families, in our relationships, and other facets of life. It definitely impacts us in more ways than one. But please use the comment section. If you do comment, I'll be able to see it over here in the side panel. Sometimes I will click on them and it'll pop up, just to give you an indication of how that looks. So if you comment something and I think it's really good, or more people are commenting the same thing, I just click this and then it'll pop up just like that. It'll have your name and everything there. If you signed in, it'll have your name. If not, I think it'll just say user and then some long number. Or somebody said it's me. I don't know what I'm doing, and I can't use my phone. So yeah, I'm using my phone to do this. So there's no way I can reach out and show you how to do it. So I apologize in advance for that. What time is it? One more minute here, and then I'll go ahead and get started, man. Because if you like me, you got to work tomorrow, and Probably got a list of other things that you need to get done today. If it look like I'm looking off just a little bit, my computer's located like right there. And so that's why I'm looking that way, just in case people have questions or anything. But I'm gonna try to stay zoomed. I'm gonna try to stay zoned in to my actual camera so that you know that I'm talking to you. But I do have to monitor the chat and everything over here. So yes, thank you, Amanda. What's up? How's it going? Welcome out. I know me and you talked about this a little bit before I said I was gonna make it an episode. So I'm pretty sure you'll have something to weigh in if you feel like it. If you don't worry about it. All right, it's 7:05. Let's ride. So to the person that's in here, welcome to the Static. To the people that's listening to this, welcome to the Static Podcast. It's a podcast dedicated to men's mental health, especially Black men, and how mental health concerns or lack of addressing mental health concerns leads to negative impacts in our social lives, our family lives, and even in our romantic relationships. So hopefully, this is a safe space or at least a resource for people to use if they're stuck or they're thinking about seeking mental health treatment and what have you. I do want to set a couple of ground rules. One, be respectful in the comment section. We may not always agree on everything, but we don't have to name call. We don't have to use profanity. We can respect each other's differences. That's a big thing that I pride myself on is I try to respect people's preferences and their way of living life, even if it don't line up with my own way or my own way of thinking. Who am I? I'm not the end all be all in this thing. Second, be comfortable, be yourself, but be careful of what you share because, like I said earlier, this is not a confidential space. And so I can't control what people say. And I can't control what people choose to do with the information that you provide here. So this is not a therapy session. I'm not offering you therapy. But if you would like to get in contact with a therapist, I do know a lot of great therapists that are willing to and open to taking on new clients. Some accept insurances, some don't. Some have sliding scales. And those things are help people to get access to mental health services. Hey, Joyce. Hello, Joyce. Welcome in. I'm glad you were able to get in. I was saying earlier I couldn't get my phone, so there's no way I could get you in because I'm using my phone to record this. It's just easier, so I don't have to set up multiple things. So let's jump right in. When we look at men's mental health, especially Black men's mental health, first thing I want to point out is that there's a lack of research regarding Black men and how we process our emotions. One, nobody asks us that question. And then second, if they do ask us that question, it's usually answered with a blanket statement. I'm good. It's all good, man. You know, life is life. Life is what it is. You have to do what you have to do what you can do, and keep moving on. And I hear that a lot in my office. I hear that a lot talking to other professionals that work with Black men on mental health concerns. Like I said in previous episodes, usually we're in session 2 or 3 or 4 before I even get the understanding or the real reason that brought men into my office, especially men of color into my office. And so I thought about that for a little while. I talked with a couple of friends about, how they view mental health, or especially as it pertains to Black men. And 3 emotions popped up more than anything. And those are the 2 questions rather, 3 emotions that popped up more than anything. And then I asked you guys 2 questions. I asked men, one, do you think that men should be able to express more than just happy, indifferent, and mad? And 93% of all men that answered that poll said yes, men should be able to express more than just happy, indifferent, and mad. What, 7%? I want to say was like, nah, men shouldn't. Though, like we don't need to express those things. Whenever we have emotions, though, we keep that inside, or that's only with us, and we adjust and we be strong and we keep moving forward. And so I asked women. As women, another question I said, well, can you tell when a man is feeling any emotion other than those 3? So any emotion you can name other than happy, indifferent, and mad. And 94% of women said yes, 6% of women said no. That they can't tell when a man, especially a Black man, is feeling anything other than happy, indifferent, or mad. And I'm going to be honest, that's not That's not any different from the research that I was able to find regarding the subject. More than anything, expressing emotion in the Black community, especially for young Black men, Black boys, was equated with femininity. It was equated with being weak. Um, it was equated with not being able to handle the stresses of life. You're not strong enough. And so if you express anything other than what's socially accepted or culturally accepted in our culture as Black people, then you will look down upon. Now, that's not always in the form of words. People weren't necessarily saying or telling Black men, "Hey, you're weak because you're showing sadness," or "You're weak because you're feeling guilty." But it was implied, and then it's those implicit biases that are a little bit more sneaky. They're a little bit harder to pin down, or they're a little bit harder to address in the same regard, because there's nothing outright that we can point at that says, you know what, if you're feeling sad, then you're considered weak. But those socially accepted emotions, happy, of course, everybody's allowed to feel happy. Everybody benefits from you feeling happy. Indifferent means that, yeah, I can take it or I can leave it, man. You know, I'm thugging this thing out, as some of my clients will say, or, you know, I'm not gonna crash out, Mr. K. And I'm like, what you mean by crash out? I'm not gonna let my emotions get the best of me. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep moving forward. And I was like, okay, but what are you feeling? But what's the emotion that pops up there? And they're just like, I'm good. And that's what I label as indifferent. Like, I could take it or leave it, man. I could take, you know, losing the homeboy to gun violence, or I can keep going. But feeling sad about it, crying about it, is not accepted. So I ain't gonna be happy about it. I can show that I'm the third one. I can show that I'm angry. I can show my anger, because people expect me as a Black man to be angry and to use that anger. The double-edged sword to that is that even if I am showing anger, now I'm being labeled as the angry Black guy, because everybody expects that. Everybody expects the anger and the indifference or the happiness to show up. But what do I say when, you know what, I'm afraid? I'm afraid, right? A lot of my friends have died because of gun violence, and I run in those same circles. I could be next. I can't tell. It's not safe for a Black man to tell people that, because then you're weak or you're scared, right? And scared is something to be avoided at all costs. Same thing with shame. You know, I did something I'm not so proud of. I feel shameful. 9 times out of 10, the response to a Black man feeling shame is, well, you shouldn't have done that. Well, you should have known better. You should have done better. You should have. You should have. If I were you, I would have. You know, I heard something earlier today. I was driving to work, and it was like one of the quiet insults is, well, if that's what you choose to do, then that's you. And I mean, I love that for you. But the implicitness in that is, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have did that. If you feel shame about that, man, that's you. Deal with it how you deal with it. But I know for me, I don't feel that way. I'm indifferent about it. I can take it or leave it. So when we look at these things and how they impact the Black community, we have to ask ourselves, what happens to those emotions when they're not expressed? What happens to those emotions when there's nobody there to really understand genuinely what you're going through? And I think the answer for Black men is it's repressed. And what I mean by repressed is it's pushed down. It's put under a lid. It's hid under the covers, or it's forced behind this mask of masculinity. Because I'm showing you that I'm strong, right? Then there's no way I feel shame or loneliness or fear or guilt, because it's going to come out in anger. And so that's the emotion that's expected. When I lost my mom in 2019, I was angry. I was angry at God because, man, that was my rock. You know, that was everything. That was my everything. Um, but there were people in my circle that I was able to be vulnerable with and say, you know what, I feel lonely. I feel guilty about things that are unsaid. But that was my way of expressing that. And I realized as a mental health therapist, everybody doesn't have that avenue. So what happens is, for Black men that are experiencing anything other than happy, indifferent, and mad, these emotions get pressed down, reshaping, and then it comes up as anger. And so now it's starting to impact my friendships. I'm choosing to isolate from my friends. I don't want to be around my friends anymore because I don't know how to feel. I'm not as close with my wife anymore because I don't know how to feel. for men of color that are part of the LGBTQ plus. I don't want to be with my partner anymore because I don't know what to feel. And I think that's one of the early signs of mental health concerns, especially when we start looking at anxiety and depression. And the way I break that down is that we're looking at anxiety, right? Anxiety, if we're driving a car, everything through your windshield will be anxiety. Those are the future things that haven't happened yet. That's that intense, overwhelming worry about future events. So, will I be able to land this job? Will I be able to perform in this job at the correct capacity? Will I be a great dad? Is my relationship going to work? Those things. And what happens with anxiety is that they come in and out of view because there's not one specific thing that you can land on. And so your brain starts to race. One of the characteristics of anxiety is those racing thoughts, those thoughts that seem to come in and out from everywhere. And so that's how I frame anxiety for anybody out there that's listening. If you're having those intense thoughts, those racing thoughts about things that have not passed yet, that's generally how I conceptualize anxiety. Now, depression are things that happened in the past. Like I'm sad about things that have happened in the past. I can't reconcile things that happened in the past, and I'm dragging them with me. So that's everything out the back window that's attached to the car, right? And it's starting to weigh you down. So now you lose interest in things that you used to love doing. So if you were a basketball player, basketball is no longer fun. If you enjoy game nights with friends, game nights are no longer fun. And what happens is either you reach out for something external to validate that. And unfortunately, for a lot of Black men, what they reach out for is substances. And so drinking becomes heavy, or drug use becomes heavy, and these things replace the expression of those emotions that are now repressed. And so that's what I look at. 9 times out of 10, if it's not anything structural, when I say structural, that's on a biological basis. So, imbalance in your chemicals in your brain will cause anxiety and depression. If it's nothing there that points at that, I'm looking at experiences that have happened or things that these people have gone through, men have gone through, that have not been resolved and it's repressed. And now I can't talk about it because even if it was something small, it's become compacted, and now it's a accumulation of things that is impossible to move. So I want to give some time. I'm slowing myself down because I don't want to rush through this. I want to give us time to ask questions uh, about what you've seen, how this has impacted you. Maybe it was your dad or a favorite uncle that just seemed to change overnight without cause or without anything that you can pinpoint. What was it like for you reaching out to that person? Did you reach out to that person? What was it like seeing them cry? What was it like watching them change their demeanor and how they did things? Because these are warning signs that we see on a daily basis. I know people will say, "Well, man, Kowalski ain't acting like himself." Well, what do you mean he's not acting like himself? Let's pinpoint what's different and what's missing. I see Amanda has gave us a question here. I'm going to put it up here so we can see it. She said, "How do we as Black women provide a safe environment for our men to be emotionally vulnerable with us?" Whoa, that's a good one. That's a really, really good one. One thing I want to address is that we're all people. I know that's like common knowledge, right? But I don't think we know that. I don't think we practice that. And what I mean by is I've heard many people say, well, women feel deeper, they feel differently than men. And I always say, okay, well, what emotions do women feel that men don't? Like, can you pinpoint any other emotions that women feel that men don't? And they're usually like, well, a woman just feels them deeper. And what I say to that is that you've been taught to express those when they come up. You've been provided education on what those feelings are when they arise. Unfortunately for Black men, when those feelings rise up, they're usually negatively labeled as something to avoid. And so where you're learning to understand what events are associated with these emotions and why it's important to feel these emotions, Black men are taught to avoid them. Right? And so I think a great way for women to provide a safe environment for men is to just listen, right? If you just listen, really listen. And when I say listen, don't just try to figure out what he's feeling, but ask a question like, hey, you know what? Preface it with, I want to have a serious conversation. 9 times out of 10, most men I know are in joking modes. We love to joke, we love to play around, we love to kid. And so if you bring up an emotion, we've been taught not to dive into those things. And so we're going to playfully push it off. But if you say, you know what, I want to have a serious conversation, I want to know what you're feeling because I've noticed your behavior is XYZ. And then give them the space to talk about it. If they don't open up to you right away, don't take that personally. I would encourage you not to take that personally. Just understand that what you practice since you were a little child is new for most grown men. For most grown black men, understanding emotion and expressing emotions is totally new. That's a new concept. We don't have a reference for that. And going through my grad program, I thought one of the silliest theories out there was emotion focused theory. I was like, that is the silliest thing I ever heard in my life. Like, who would want to sit down and talk about emotions all day? And now it's become one of the most prominent moves in what I'm trying to do. Because I understand that without that component of who you are, then you can't truly be your genuine self, right? To deny that I'm a black man won't be my genuine self. I am black. I have emotions, and most men have been taught to deny those things. So I hope that helps. Joyce said that's so true. Communication is key. And I can say, and I hope she don't mind me bragging on them, but that's my aunt, by the way. I have watched her and her husband have some really meaningful conversations to where, you know what, man, when so and so said that, that really affected me. And it wasn't, well, I don't know why you would let that get to you. It was, yeah, I can see why, because XYZ. Though these things unfolded because they shared life together and they've supported each other in all that they do. And so when I think it was you, Amanda, when you asked me if I ever seen a healthy relationship modeled, I can point to that one and say, well, yeah, I actually have because they support each other physically, mentally, and emotionally. And most people miss out on the emotional piece because they expect men to be strong physically. But if your physical being is missing that emotional piece, you're not as strong as you think you are. It only takes one event to really show you how minuscule physical strength is in situations like this. So I hope that helped in some capacity. I don't get to give advice a lot in my line of work because as therapists, that's not what we do. We don't give advice. We figure out where you are and we trying to help you get to where you want to be. But advice giving is not one of those things. And so when I look at things like, well, what can black women do? Listen. You guys can listen. Warning: if a black man opens up to you and he tells you something that really bothers him, and he identifies that he feels guilty about that, do not use that as a talking point to win an argument later on in life. The likelihood of him telling you anything else, slim to none. So I want to make sure I say that do not use emotionally driven information as a means to win an argument. Because you throw it up in our faces, we're probably not going to tell you anything else. That ain't only true for men, that's also true for women. I don't know many women on this planet that will allow you to use something she told you in confidence, something that she was being vulnerable to you about. If you use that against her, you have just you done stamped your ticket, as my grandma would say. You just stamped your ticket with me. I'm done. I ain't telling you nothing else. And there's no different from men because that opens up that wound again of mistrust. Like, see, now I can't trust you because this happened to me before. Right. And that's all this most of the time. I won't say every time, most of the time, that's what it is. Men, because we are not allowed the full range of our emotions, whenever mistrust and pain comes into the picture, those become hard lessons. And then those hard lessons are reinforced by people in our families, and they have great intentions. Don't get me wrong, I know they do. People in our families and our friend circles reinforce those ideals of, see, Don't let people get to you. Don't let people get close to you. You can't live in your feelings. That's weakness. That's woman stuff. You're being a sissy. You're being a punk. You hear all these words, and they become a hard lesson for you, and you put on your thick skin really quick, really, really quick. And now anything that looks like that old scar gets pushed out, and the response is usually anger. The emotion that comes to the forefront is anger because you're protecting that vulnerable place that hasn't healed. It's keloided over. Like if you open that up, that's a medical emergency because it is not really healed. It just has a very thick surface on it. It's our job in therapy is to go back in and help heal that inner child that wasn't allowed to feel. And it's unfortunate. The other thing that I want to talk about with that, though, man, is black men are the main people that don't participate in research. Well, Kowalski, why is that important? If you are not represented in the research, there is no funding to enact change. I can talk all day about how important it is for black men to get therapy and for black men to really work on all of the traumas that had happened to us and to our forefathers and our family members. And then I have a funding agency that says, that sounds great, Kowalski. What are the numbers? And I'm like, maybe 80% of people. And they was like, well, we can't go off of maybe. I can't hand you a $5 million grant to focus on hiring therapists and supporting people of color and going back to school to become therapists if I don't have numbers to support. It's a numbers game. And unfortunately, as we talked about in season 1, that mistrust of the system has caused most black men to stay away from research, to stay away from mental health professionals, medical professionals, and it's a detriment to our own well-being. I always say in therapy, especially when I'm dealing with unprocessed trauma, unprocessed grief, I know everything that happened from point A to where we are now. We talked about that for 4 sessions. For these next 3 sessions, what can we do different? And that's my next point. Like, we understand that there are more emotions than happy, indifferent, and mad. What do we do from here that is not going to be representative of all the stuff that's happened already? What can you do different today? Black men, what can you do different today that will bring about a better future, not only for you, but for your children, your nieces, your nephews, your cousins? How do you now start to pave the way to say, you know what, we know what it was like in the past. We know what it took to get here. We lived it. How do we move forward? And I'm suggesting one of the ways we move forward is to show up in research. In order to show up in research, you have to participate. Now, research is not necessarily fun for a lot of participants because you got to fill out all these, got to fill out surveys and do questionnaires, and you're like, oh, it's going to take forever. It's going to take a long time. But that's the grassroots that we need right now in order to keep pushing this thing forward. We're starting to see more black men show up in therapy, and I love it. I love to see black men walking through the doors because that's one, they're getting the help they need. And then number 2, that's also the data we need to say, hey, we need more funding in this area. We need more resources in this area because men are starting to catch on. I'm a little Pollyanna, so I think that things are going to get way better, way faster than most people would like to believe. I understand, though, it's a process, and we're going to process it. I'm going to be, as long as I'm here in this capacity, my job is to keep moving the ball forward. And I'm going to try to bring on as many people as I can, but I'm just one person. So what can you do, people that are here? How do you get more black men involved? Once again, talk about it. Have real conversations. Like, you know what? You don't have to, the focus doesn't always have to be on them. One thing of black men, help me. One thing that black men are really good at is detecting BS. They practice it. That's what we got to practice. We got to practice detecting BS when it pops up. And so don't open it up with talking about what they need. You be like, you know what? I've been really thinking about my mental health. I'm going to see a therapist. I wonder what you think about that. Do you believe in therapy? and allow them to say whatever it is they want to say. You don't have to convince them in that moment. Just being open about where you are, the process. Once again, like I said, if there's something they are doing that's concerning to you, being able to have that conversation, but prefacing it with, get my words together. You can preface that conversation with saying, I want to be honest. I want to talk sincerely about this topic, and I hope you will listen, or I hope you will at least understand that I'm coming from a place of love because I want to see something different. I want you to have the most out of life, and then allowing them to sit with it, even if they don't agree with you right off. As a Black therapist, I'm usually the only male in the room. And I know that's not only true for my profession. That's true for a lot of professionals out here. We're usually the only Black person, and then sometimes the only Black male or the only Black female sitting in white spaces. And we ain't even touched on racism, how that impacts all of this, because it's a long, dark road of unprocessed trauma there. But I can speak from my perspective of being the only Black male in the room, and having to watch which emotions I express. But I have made a vow to myself that I'm not going to go home and think about what I should have said or how I should have expressed emotions. I'm going to do that in the moment, and be true to my emotions in the moment, but to have enough resolve and have enough restraint to not become overwhelmed by it and allow it to shift me. And so that's one of the things that I hope to start imparting. If I can get a Black male support group going, it could be virtually, it could be in person. But how do you process this? How do you, in the moment, use your other emotions without crossing the line, without blowing up, or what my clients call it, without we used to call it spazzing out. I think they call it something crashing out. Without crashing out, how do you explore your emotions and express your emotions to other people in a manner that doesn't create more conflict, but it also asserts your position? Um, so I got about 10 more minutes before I'm gonna start wrapping this up. Anybody else got questions about this? Anybody know have an example of Black men not being able to express emotions, or where you knew the emotion of anger was present, but that wasn't the original emotion that person was feeling? Anybody know anything like that? I can say for myself, man, I've watched many Black men. I'm a Black male, so I've been around a lot of Black men. I've watched things like pain. Pain usually is hidden behind the mask of anger. So because you're sad about something, then the expression becomes anger. I watched that play out in father-son relationships. I watched that play out in best friend relationships, where this incident or the event sparked the emotion of pain, sadness, and the reciprocating emotion was anger. I watched that with shame. I watched people be called out on their behaviors, and they were ashamed of it because it was against their moral code. And the emotion that got expressed was anger, right? Instead of really sitting in the shame and being like, yeah, that was against my moral code. And I feel guilty about that, or I feel shameful about that. The emotion that's usually expressed by Black men is anger. And so we get labeled as angry Black male. We get other characteristics thrown on us like aggressive, thugs. Some of the stuff we've adopted and tried to turn into a positive thing, but I don't understand the positivity behind being called a thug. Thug life. I know it's a gimmick to make money, but for some people, it really is a lifestyle that they've glamorized. And what would you say would be the emotion behind that? Pretty sure we can point out a lot of different ones, living that life. Other part of that is just adverse childhood experiences, right? We call them ACEs. If we look at how ACEs have impacted how Black men express and identify emotions, you'll be amazed how many young Black men have been exposed to things like gun violence or physical violence or domestic abuse or drug overdoses, drug sales, you know what I'm saying? Things of that nature that our white counterparts or other races, other people don't experience on a daily. But our kids do, our young black males do. And the thing about that that's really confusing to me is that somehow these men are then expected to turn around and be loving fathers. They turn around and they're expected to show empathy to a wife that's having a tough time during her pregnancy. Do we think that it just magically cuts home and that you're magically able to express and identify these emotions that come up when you've been taught to suppress them your entire life? You've had 18 years, right? An ideal sense, 18 to 20 years before you're expected to now flip the switch around and say, you know what, I can express sadness, I can express guilt and shame and love. It doesn't work that way. And so a lot of times we get the short end of the stick. And it's very unfortunate because, one, our own mistrust of people drives us away. Secondly, our community often mislabels us and gives us negative labels because of what we've experienced. And then, three, I mean, mistrust of the system itself. The people that are supposed to help aren't really there to help. Like I'm a number to them. I'm a statistic to them. I'm a paycheck to them. Nothing more. Amanda says, "How can we help cultivate emotional intelligence and expression in our little boys so they don't have the same struggle?" Very good question, and it's multi-dimensional. One, start with yourself. We have to start with ourselves. I'm not saying you, Amanda, personally. I'm saying as a collective, we need to heal ourselves first. I can only give away what I have. Right? I can't give you $1,000,000 if I don't have it. It's impossible. And so we have to come together and heal, or take that step to heal yourself and understand what's still hurting you. Because if you can identify it in your own self, then you're less likely to impose those same things on other people. So step one, heal thyself first. Two, be proactive in talking about these things when they pop up. Now, I had a situation where a friend reached out and she said, my child has expressed interest in sex. And I don't know what to do with that. Right. The initial emotion there is shock. Understanding the shock of it, understanding that, this is something that at that age is not readily apparent yet, but dealing with your own emotions first. I'm shocked. Well, I can handle this the wrong way. I can crash out and handle this the wrong way and be mad. And then I'm more than likely going to shut down that child's willingness to come to me about anything else that pops up. So how would you want to handle that situation? How would you want somebody to handle that situation with you? So another very important question to ask. Black fathers, I'm pretty sure you guys have you're up to your necks with stressors and things that's going on. But being able to stop in that moment and understand that this is a child, this is your child, and they're reaching out for you for that ledge of trust, and they're trying to grab onto you because they look at you as a role model. And the worst thing that you could possibly do is to stamp that out, because I know you know what that feels like. That's why we're having this conversation. I know you know what it feels like to have your feelings hurt, to be shame, come home crying, and then the lesson that you get taught from your parents is suck it up, boy. Get out your feelings. You acting like a woman. Men don't cry. Be careful of how you shut those things down. What's another way that you can address that? That'll, one, strengthen your child to come to you with anything else, but also build them up to understand what are the benefits of feeling. That's a great question. I'll go into that one. And Amanda, I hope I answered your question. I kind of went on a tangent there. That's my thing, especially with younger black men, little boy black men. I think they're forced to grow up so fast. And then when the world recognizes that we forced them to grow up so fast and they start treating them like adults, even though they're 12 and 13, then we turn around and get mad. It's like, but we're helping. I'm not saying we are the source of the problem. We are not the source of the problem. This is a systemic racist issue. I get that, but we are not helping to slow the train down. because we're forcing our kids out of fear to grow up so fast instead of allowing them to learn, just like we allow little girls to learn. What are the benefits of feeling these things? What are the consequences of getting stuck in these things? That's my next question. What's the consequence of getting stuck in your emotions? And how do you address that? What are the benefits of feeling your emotions? How can you name the benefits of feeling your emotions? Because a lot of times we skip over that, and then we expect people to just automatically know. One of the benefits of fear is preservation. If you're not afraid of lions and you go pet a lion, your life is likely going to end because lions don't like to be petted by people they don't know. Like, that's not something we do. So that fear keeps you safe. It preserves your life, right? What are the benefits of anger? What's a great benefit of feeling anger? Well, one, assertiveness. You get to assert your stance. You stand up for what you believe in, right? But if anger is something that is to be avoided, then you never assert yourself. You learn to push it down. And there's only so much pushing down you can do. We call that what happens when those emotions are unprocessed. So it ain't processed. It's just sitting in there boiling. And then something happens and you explode. And in your explosion, even though it's an outcry for help or an outcry of frustration, you're now being labeled as thug, right? A miscreant, right? Menace to society. And that's the systemic racism that comes to light there, but it's also ammo that's used against us that we perpetuate in our own communities, in our own neighborhoods. I got you, man. You got some good points trying to get some for the nephew. Of course, right? These people are worth you sticking your neck out in the fray for. I know for sure my niece is. And so I'm going to learn all I can now so that at least she can stand on my shoulders and be a little higher. And I think we say family supports each other, and then we don't support our kids, especially our young Black boys, when they're going through emotional turmoil. We tell them to get over it. We tell them to move on too fast. We tell them to grow up. And then when they do these things because they trust us, only to find a world that's so unforgiving, then they're stuck. They can't come back to the source. They can't come back to these people that trust because you told me to get over it last time and now I'm not obeying you. I must be doing something wrong. Right. Well, we could segue into religion right there and spirituality, but I won't do that. That's a whole nother podcast. And I don't think we got enough time in a year of podcast to really break down what it's like to also use religion as a you're not doing something right tool instead of one of support and processing to say, you know what, I don't have it all together either, but this is what we can do. So I hope that helped, man. I hope for a lot of other Black men to be in this room just so I can get their perspectives on what it was like for them to grow up with fathers or uncles that were either supportive of them being emotionally vulnerable, or if they weren't. Because I just don't want to share my perspective. I'm only one person, and this is why it's important for us to engage in research. But as you can see, most Black men don't want to talk about these things because it has been ingrained in them, ingrained in us to avoid emotions at all costs. But it's a very necessary part of who we are. And until we can reconcile that, I think we're going to be stuck in this kind of never-ending cycle for a long time. A long time. And my thing is, if you're not making progress, you're going backwards. So if you're standing still, you're moving backwards because time hasn't stopped. Time is still ticking away. And we don't know how much longer we got on this planet. So trying to affect change while we can with the resources we have right now, I think is very important. I don't always get everything right, but I think in my missteps, in the ways that I miss it, I'm also learning. I'm also trying to learn what I can do differently and which emotions did I mislabel. Did I identify all of them? And I have people in my corner that support that. Now, I said I have people. Not everybody in my corner supports that, and I respect where they are. But I also, Black men, you have to draw a boundary to say, you know what, I understand this is where you're comfortable with saying and sharing your emotions, but I understand I have to go a little further because I want something different than you do, without thinking that person is less than you or above you or any of those things. This comparison game gets in the way a lot for Black men. You don't believe me? Go sit in the barbershop. Don't even say anything. You just go sit in there for about an hour or so, and I guarantee you can come out with a notebook full of comparisons that men have made to each other in just that amount of time, because I think that's the nature of who men are. We're competitive by nature, but I think somewhere in the equation things have gotten mixed up. We forget that emotions are a necessary part of this equation, because without them you will be dead. I guarantee you, if you did not have any emotions, you did not feel anything, you will be dead before you reach age 3 or 4. Guarantee you. If you don't believe me, I would love to talk to you about why that's true and why science backs it up. But that's another time. I won't hold y'all too much longer. It's 7:45. Anybody got any other good questions? I love talking about this stuff. And I hope I've made it clear how suppressing your emotions leads to some mental health concerns like anxiety and depression. But then there's also personality concerns. I don't talk about personality pathology a lot because it's very complicated. But when you think about things like borderline personality is this real intense fear of abandonment. Right? So much so to where people will praise you like you're a god one day, and then the next day you're a piece of trash. Or they'll go ahead and sense that, you know what, this person don't want to be with me, they don't care about me, so I'm gonna end the relationship or the friendship first. All that stuff can be very much learned from mistrust. Can be learned from suppressing emotions. When we look at things like histrionic, always wanting to be the center of attention, and say everything is always about me. It's a way of being, and it becomes a disorder only when it starts to impact your daily life. So, how has it impacted your daily life? How do you know when things are impacting your daily life to the point to where now it's causing you to be not as efficient at completing your day? Can you pick up on those things? Do you notice when they start to go awry? These are a lot of conversations I would love to have with Black men, but them jokers just don't show up. And I get that to a certain degree. Uh, but at the same time, it makes my heart hurt a little bit because it's like, man, we have the tools here. We have people. I'm not the only therapist out here that's saying this either. If you don't, if you like, man, I don't like Kowalski. You when we had beef back in the day. I'm not the only therapist out here that you can listen to. I'm not even the only podcaster out here that you can listen to. But listen to somebody, talk with somebody, engage in some form of group or community to where you can express who you are without wearing that mask every day, all day. If you have to be strong every day, all day, I guarantee you your body is making up the difference somewhere. So if you have chronic pain, if you have difficulty sleeping, if you're noticing that your eating patterns are off, these are all ways to where you have either a breakdown or a stall in what you're thinking, what you're doing, and how you're feeling. Guarantee you, because all of them are connected. Right. Front two tires of the car. If you drive a car and you turn the steering wheel, the front two tires move. Those front two tires that you directly control are the same as what you think and what you do. The back two tires, they're going to follow where the front two tires go. That's how you feel and how your body responds. So if you think I'm weak, I ain't gonna be showing my emotions. That's weak. That's weak boy stuff. You know, you an F boy is what they say. You're a punk or whatever. I'm not showing my emotions. Well, you just shut down the whole wheel. So how can you get to where you want to go with only 3 working wheels on a 4-wheel vehicle? One of those have to compensate, or all 3 of those have to compensate for you shutting down that wheel, right? What do you mean by overcompensating for the shutdown of my emotions? Well, you're either gonna have racing thoughts, you're gonna think that you're not good enough, you're gonna think everybody's out to get you, you're gonna think you can't trust anyone. What are you gonna do? You're gonna reach for something that's gonna help all that go away, like a substance, like alcohol, marijuana, women. You're gonna reach for something. 6, you're going to reach for it because you want to fill that void that's there. Well, your body's trying to overcompensate for it. So it's going to show up with things like high blood pressure, severe depression, suicidal ideation, all that stuff, chest pains, neck pains, back pains, joint pain in general. All that stuff is connected because you've decided that your emotions are not worth talking about, and you shut down that emotion. You shut down that wheel that's supposed to turn to keep you a more balanced you. And so that's what we do in therapy. It's all about helping you balance, get back into the balance of these things, so that you can have a more effective life, and that you're not walking around with all of this weight on you. But you can lead a horse to water, can't make him drink. And I think that for me as a Black professional, that is one of the toughest. Um, that's a tough concept to come to terms with, because I get into this mode to where I have to avoid burnout because I don't want to. I can't force anybody to do anything they don't want to, but I also see what it does to people in the long run when it's unprocessed. Now, therapy is not for everybody. I told y'all this ain't a therapy session, and I get it. All Black men don't need therapy. Me personally, I think everybody needs therapy, but all Black men don't need therapy. And some people are doing just fine. That's great. Encourage somebody else that you don't believe is doing so great, or that you're concerned about, or that you see, having a tough time with this thing called life, because it changes day to day, hour to hour. So that's my hope, man. I hope you guys have gotten something out of this podcast. I enjoy talking about mental health because, one, that's my job, but two, it's also a discovered passion of mine. One, because of my own life and how my life has turned around since understanding these things that I'm now talking to you about. I told you at the beginning, I didn't think emotions mattered because that's what I learned. But I realized that rule didn't work anymore. And so I had to do something different. So that's my challenge to you. How can you do something different starting now that'll help you get to a better place for the time being? Because you get to rest when you stop breathing. Other than that, life is a journey. And I hope all of you guys make it to the destination that you want to make it to. I hope that you get to know your authentic self. I hope that you become comfortable in the skin that you were blessed in, regardless of what you think about it. I get it. My ears are big. I'm losing hair. But this is the skin that I've been blessed to be in, with people that I know love and care about me. And I'm happy to be in it. It's frustrating at times. Ask a coworker. It's frustrating at times, but I get the importance of being me and loving who I am. So that's my hope for all of y'all. Once again, I hope this was great. I think our next topic is going to be either how Black men identify in sports, how sports has become the kind of this crutch of an identity. I don't play football anymore. I am football. Football is my life, or baseball is my life. Soccer is my life, and how that also deals with self-esteem and self-efficacy. And so I think that's one we're going to explore a little bit later, and then we're going to jump back in and talk about family situations, and how the Black family can heal and move forward by accepting that Black men need help. So we're going to look at these things. We're going to slowly unwind them. Also, if you know any Black therapists or any other counseling professions, please send them my way. You can find me on any social media, well, Facebook, Instagram, at the Static 2024. You can tell them to shoot me an email. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Kowalski. My name is Kowalski Owens. For everybody that don't know me, you can shoot me one on LinkedIn. And then also YouTube. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, because that helps me kind of get the word out a little bit more. Hopefully this thing will turn into, I don't want it to be big. I'm just be honest. I want it to be manageable, to where hopefully I can get a nice crowd, to where we can really have some in-depth conversations and get what people are thinking from multiple viewpoints. I think having those conversations and having multiple viewpoints is going to be one of the best ways forward. We don't always have to agree, but we can learn to understand what each other is, and that way we can work better as a team with moving the ball forward. If there are no other questions for me, I'm gonna go ahead and call it one. I appreciate y'all for supporting me. I appreciate y'all for your comments. Joyce, Amanda, thank y'all so much for coming and being willing to participate with your boy. I hope to see y'all next time, man. But until then, please be safe. Take care of yourselves. And if you meet a black brother, tell him this black brother said, "What's up, man? Engage with me. Talk with me. Let me know what you're thinking. You don't have to agree with me. Just come talk to me. See what we can do and see how far we can get. Until next time, peace out."